Hello and welcome to the JackCast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and as always, joining me is Steve Carroll. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. The sun is out shining and everybody's really happy, which is quite apt because on this week's podcast, we're looking back at a time which brought a lot of us a lot of joy as Swansea City fans, and that is the two full seasons then in which Roberto Martinez was at the helm. 2 seasons which really transformed us as a club and set us well on our way to the Premier League. If you have been listening to our recent podcast, you'll know that we've been going all nostalgic, looking back at Swansea seasons gone by, and today is no different. Last time out, we looked at the Kenny Jackett era and the kind of move to the Liberty Stadium. And when we last spoke, we discussed the Blackpool match, the 6-3, which ended our playoff hopes for that season. But then came the summer of 2007, Steve, which was a summer of change throughout the club, really.
Yeah, it was. I think obviously when a new manager comes in, you always think there's going to be a few changes, but I mean there were a lot really, weren't there? I mean obviously you couldn't say there was loads wrong with the squad because we finished 7th. I know obviously when Martinez had come in, there's been quite a big upturn in form, but it did tell you that we had the makings of a decent side. But I think 10 players overall came in that summer, so that's a hell of a lot really for a side where you think that. There's a lot of good players already here, but I think it really showed us that Martinez wanted to make his own stamp on the side. I mean, and if you look back as well, a lot of those players were pretty good. So, you'd always think when you have maybe 10 signings, there might be a bit half and half in terms of hit and miss. But, in general, nearly everybody did play, a positive role over the next season. So it did show you really that between Martinez and Kevin Reeves, there was certainly a great scouting network at the club at the time.
And they were a different kind of player to what we've been used to seeing, really. I mean, the football had been entertaining at various times in the previous seasons, there's no doubt about that. But these were more technically gifted players. They were players who were brought in from Spain, very different, because in the previous years, we'd gone for very tried and trusted League One and League Two performers, players who had made an impact at other clubs who fans knew about for the most part. You're thinking about people like Bayo Akinfenwa, Leon Knight, Darren Prattley, Darren Way, these types of players. Dennis Lawrence perhaps fits that category too. Players who we'd seen playing for other clubs, so we kind of knew what we were getting. With Martinez, that wasn't the case at all. I mean, we brought in Darryl Duffy for £200,000, which is the only really big money that we spent that summer. We'd seen Duffy on loan the previous season, so we thought we knew what we were getting with him. But the rest of the players, I mean, they were brought in from Spain's lower leagues and from Scotland. When you think of Doris de Vries and Jason Scotland, and then the Spaniards, the likes of Rangel, Bowther, Orlandi. A certain Ferry Bodder came in. All of these players came in the same season. We also got Paul Anderson in on loan from Liverpool. Very different players to the types that we'd been used to seeing. Players that we didn't really know much about, Steve, but still I think people got very excited about this change of direction.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you make signings, especially when you're in the lower divisions, I think there always does seem to be, a reasonable amount of excitement with them. I remember especially really before the Brian Flynn era, I mean, we never really used to make many signings, did we? I think Sean Hollins must have only made about 10 in about 3 seasons. So it's always nice, I suppose, when you get new players. And I suppose when they're foreign players, you don't know much about them. It always just sounds maybe that bit more exciting. You never really know what you're going to get, But it was an interesting time, and as you say, we didn't really spend masses of money, did we? With Duffy being the bigger signing really. Obviously he did really well the year before. That was probably one of the ones that didn't pay off as much as we'd have liked. But remember, obviously Jason Scotland was talked up a lot by Martinez in terms of him being a prolific goal scorer. And I think he was only £25,000, which obviously, as we'll go on to discuss, was an incredible bit of business really. And I think one of the big ones from my point of view was definitely going to be Doris de Vries, because think Willie Garay had faded. There was no two ways about it. I think I made a joke on one of the last podcasts. We should have left him at Bury because he wasn't so good after that little episode when we won promotion. But you know, a lot. They were probably big ones, and obviously Ferry Boulder was one as well. I think considering he was a regular in Den Haag's team in the Eredivisie, so the top division in the Netherlands, to then drop into League One was a hell of a drop. But Martinez seemed to be very persuasive, really, didn't he, in terms of his targets? I mean, there weren't many that he seemed to be. There weren't many players in my memory that we seemed to be linked with, and they didn't arrive. So it was certainly exciting times, and I think after the way we'd ended the previous season, it was pretty evident, really, that I certainly thought we were going to be successful. How successful? Maybe not quite as much as we ended up being, but I certainly thought we were going in the right direction.
It is amazing, isn't it, how many quality players we got in for so little money. I mean, when you look back at summers gone by, I mean, that has to be the best summer we've had as when it comes to transfer dealings, surely, because the quality of the players that we brought in for so little money was just astonishing. I mean, a League One team had no right, really, to buy a player of Ferry Boulder's quality, a player of Angel Rangel quality. Doris de Vries was a cut above at that level. Jason Scotland was a cut above at that level. These were players who should not have been anywhere near League One, basically, and we got them for peanuts.
Yeah, so the funny thing, which you look at now, I mean, obviously the midfield three of Boulder, Pratley, Leon, I mean, I'm not being funny, but at their peak, they'd have run rings around the midfield that I think we had the last couple of years in the Premier League. I mean, I don't know whether that's damning on that side or it's bigging up the League One one, but they were terrific players. And you mentioned there, Paul Anderson is another one, really. I mean, it's quite sad that I don't think he went on to have the career maybe that he should have done, but for that one season that we had, I mean, he was fantastic. And
I thought he was destined for the Premier League. I thought he was absolutely insane. His pace, skill, he was just a direct runner. He could finish. He was an absolutely superb player, but he never ever lived up to the hype created in that first season, really. And we'll come on to Anderson later on, along with many of these players, but I think we can all agree the biggest mistake he made in his career was not coming back to us after that loan move.
Yeah, I think so. It's quite interesting. I did interview Anderson 3 or 4 years ago. I think we'll go on and remind me later, and we'll discuss what was said then. But it was what he did say was actually quite interesting, and I do actually have a little bit of sympathy for him because I think things could have turned out differently, really. But from that season, he was brilliant, wasn't he? There's no two ways about it. He was a key part of the side, and he was an exciting player as well, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, he was very different, actually, to all the other players in the team, because whereas the rest of the team were all about kind of these short, sharp passes and working the ball up the field, keeping the ball on the floor, etc., he was just out-and-out pace and direct running. And if you were a League One fullback, looking up and seeing Paul Anderson running at you, then you'd be terrified. You'd be absolutely pantsing yourself. Well, we've spoken about the players that were brought in, that the excitement that was caused. It all kicked off on a very sunny day in Oldham, of all places. A team who I think had finished in the playoff spots the previous season, if I remember rightly. They
pipped us to it. Before we go on to Oldham, I think there's one thing we should discuss. We've not mentioned it yet. The fact that as much as we made all these great signings, one player left. And it did ensure we made a profit, but it was a painful departure, wasn't it, to lose Lee Trundle a week or two before the season started, and that could have undone things really as well, couldn't it?
Well, yeah, because he was the key player in our previous seasons. Really, everything good that had happened in the previous seasons had a lot to do with Trundle, really. And it was a saga which had gone on and on and on for a while. Bristol City, obviously newly promoted to the Championship. And they eventually stumped up the cash and met the asking price, which I think was it. How much was it in the end? 1.2 million?
No, I think it was just $1 million.
Just
But to be fair, that was a lot of money, and he was 30 years old.
That's the point. You were paying for a 30-year-old striker at that point. So I think, if I'm being honest, I think the club did well, even though it was a heck of a loss to lose Trundle. Looking back, certainly you'd say that was good business by the club, because we brought in a lot of players, very, very good players, using that money to the club, which improved us as a side, making up for one very good individual going. And if you look at the way Trundle's career went after leaving us, you'd probably say that we sold him at a good time, because he never really quite hit it off in the Championship as maybe a lot of us would have expected, and never had the same impact after leaving the Swans that he did with us. So, as much as it was a shame to lose one of our favourite players, a great entertainer, a man who we all still love, I think it's fair to say that it was brilliant business by the club, and helped us actually with the season to come.
Yeah, I think it is a fair comment. Obviously, and given the way the season then ended up going, I mean, it's difficult to feel a sense of regret over it. But I mean, at the same time, we are talking about a player here who was a true one-off. Probably, of all the players we've ever had, the one I missed the most in terms of watching, because the entertainment on offer was unbelievable, really, and some of the goals he scored, some of the tricks. I mean, they're the type of things you'll never forget. And so it was gutting when he left. There's no two ways about it. But the club, they played it well, and they made Trundle put a transfer request in, which also then covered them from the point of view of they didn't. If it looked like the club wanted him to go, then the backlash off the fans obviously would have been bad. But sort of forcing him to put in the transfer request then gives the impression that it was his decision, and then that also then covers the club from criticism. And like I said, the money that we had that came in was good as well. So it's difficult to look back on it and regret it, but at the same time, you can't lie. It was disappointing, wasn't it, as well?
It was the end of an era, really. We lost probably the player who had been most important to us in the previous years, and we got in kind of a new individual who was going to be key to the next stage of our development, and that was Martinez, who'd brought in all these players. And like I said, we started off the Martinez era properly, I guess, after the little test the previous season. We started off with an away game at Oldham in the sunshine. First chance to really see these exciting new players in competitive action. And it got off the worst possible start with a penalty in like the first minute, which put Oldham ahead. But after that, Steve, I mean, that day is quite legendary, because we lost the match 2-1. But the football that we played was so sensational. We absolutely dominated the game. We created a ton of chances. Jason Scotland got his first goal, and it was a very well taken one too. I mean, nobody who's there that day quite understands how we didn't win the game, let alone lost it. But I think everybody who left had a feeling, do you know what? Even though we've lost today, what we've seen today suggests it could be a really special season.
Yeah, I'd definitely go along with that. I mean, I must admit, at full time when we lost, I was absolutely livid, because it was just such like a travesty, innit? I think the frustrating thing from my point of view is, as well as we had played, the goals we'd given away were quite soft. I remember just thinking, we're going to dominate these games, but then we can't defend. It's not going to get us. It's going to hold us back, isn't it? But our overall play was superb, really. I mean, we as you say, we completely dominated, created endless chances, and it was a travesty of a result. There's no two ways about it. But I mean, yeah, you could clearly sense, couldn't you? We were in the right direction, and we were not far off being a side that was going to dominate a lot of games and score a lot of goals, really. It was just going to be defensively that was the clear weakness, wasn't it? But I mean, after that, I think we played Forest the following week. We dominated and drew 0-0, and that was a frustrating one as well. But obviously, Forest, we knew we were going to be a good side, and to have dominated them was encouraging. I think from my point of view, the first 10 games or so, it was a little bit patchy. I mean, we had some good results. We had a couple of poor ones. I remember we went to Leeds, and they were in the spell where obviously they had the -15 from the points deduction, they won their first 8 or 9 games, didn't they? And that was included in that. I remember that was the only game where I felt we were outplayed. That's probably a fair description. I think at the end of the season, Martinez did, basically say a similar thing in terms of that was the only game he felt we never really had a chance of winning. Like, he felt we could have won every other game that season, which is mad, really. But I think where it started to click was a game at Lake Norrie. I don't know if you remember it, but they were top at the time, and we came away from there and won 5-0, which is a staggering result, really. And
stunning goal.
Yeah. Tom Butler scored one. I remember where he's cut in and stuck it in the top corner. Then Pratley has scored a brilliant one from long range as well. And yeah, from there, from my point of view, I don't think we looked back. I think we went to Bournemouth a week after and won. We went to Yeovil and won. And I remember coming away from Yeovil when we'd won and thinking, oh, okay, because we always went there and lost. So to go there and win, it was like, okay, this is a bit of a statement win here. We never do much, and we've come away with the win. So that sort of gave me that inner belief then that this side might be a bit different to the one from the last couple of years.
Yeah, it did just reach that turning point because, as you said, in the first few weeks, as well as we were playing in a lot of games, the results didn't really reflect the standard of performances, really. And I do remember, actually, some fans were kind of questioning, are we actually on the right path? A lot of pretty football, but we're not getting the results, and there was a fear that, that maybe the pretty football wasn't really suited to League One, and that we needed to be a bit more dogged and go back to basics if we were actually going to start winning games again. And obviously Martinez is not a man to change his approach, and he stuck to it, and boy did it work out. I think that Lake Norrie match was the first time that season we'd actually won by more than one goal, and suddenly we scored 5. And from then on the goals started flying. We didn't lose many games at all after that. I think it was like 4 or 5 losses for the rest of the season in the league after that, I think. So we just suddenly became dominant to a point I don't think we've seen actually from any other team, Swans team in my lifetime. It got to a stage where you went to a Swans game and you just expected to win. And not just win, but be entertained. I remember that season, I spent the entire time basically with my jaw dropped, because some of the stuff that we were doing, you're thinking this is on another level. You're thinking we're not just ready for the Championship, we're ready for the Premier League. Some of the football that we were playing, it was just totally different to anything that anybody had ever seen at League One level. And I think there were a lot of detractors maybe outside the club who looked at Swansea and said, they're playing a lot of pretty football, but is it going to get results at the start of that season? And then suddenly we showed, actually we can play pretty football and it can be extremely effective. And we were climbing the table. And I think, you talk about like Lake Norrie being a turning point. The other major turning point in that season for me came around the Christmas period when we had a home game against Leeds. We'd been in sensational form, winning, just not losing basically at all, and scoring a lot of goals, etc. And suddenly we had this home game against Leeds, who were still playing catch-up because of the points deduction, but were, I think, up until that point, regarded by most neutrals as the best team in the league.
What I remember about that game as well was if they'd beaten us, they'd have gone above us, which obviously is remarkable considering they had -15.
I didn't remember that, actually. That's mad. But they were. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. They were a very good team. There's no doubt about that. They had some very good players in that side. Jermaine Beckford leading the line being one of the main ones. I think Robert Snodgrass was in that team. Jonathan Douglas possibly. Just had a lot of very, very good players. And I think, a lot of people outside the club had sort of looked at Leeds and said, well, they're obviously the best team in League One. You can't, nobody else comes close. And then, Steve, I mean, it was a heck of an occasion, a full house at the Liberty. Leeds obviously bringing a lot of fans down as well. And as an occasion, it didn't disappoint.
No, it didn't. Sometimes you get these like big games, don't you, when they don't live up to the hype. I think that's a fair assessment. but this one probably surpassed the hype, really, didn't it? It was what a game it was. I think this was the first time for me where I can truly say that the Liberty atmosphere did have a homely feel to it. The place was on fire. That's one thing I do remember. It's remember it had that sense before the game. You're looking around, you could see a lot of blokes going that you maybe the older school fans that hadn't gone so much since we'd moved, and it just had that sense of this is a big game, this is, and everyone was well up for it. And obviously we've scored really early, haven't we, through Andy Robinson with a brilliant free kick, so that everyone's going mad then. Obviously they've equalised. I think Monk scored then, a rare goal by him, wasn't it, from a corner. Boda gets a red, then Jason Scotland scores an unbelievable solo goal. And remember then, so we're 3-1 up, aren't we, at the break? Alan Thompson scores a free kick early on, and then has another one 2 minutes later and hits either the bar or the post. And I remember my heart was in my mouth and thinking it could be 3-3 here with 40 minutes left, and you're thinking then they're going to turn us over, especially with the man advantage, but it didn't happen. And I think that's one of the days it's got to be where the fans probably had a very big part in making sure we did win, because the place was just non-stop for 90 minutes really. And I remember at the end it was, the celebrations were quite wild, because it was a statement win, wasn't it? Because obviously, to be fair to them, if they could have gone above us after a win, it shows you really that in a normal season they'd have been double figures worth of points in front of us at that stage. So they'd been a brilliant side really up until then, but that was probably the first time. I think Leeds had lost a couple of games but to be honest, they deserved to lose this one, because we had 10 men. So, I do remember after they did actually nosedive form-wise. So from their point of view, it definitely didn't do them any favours long-term either. And obviously for us, it was absolutely brilliant.
It was one of those iconic matches at the Liberty, which anybody who was there will never forget. It was a statement result is the way to put it. It really did just send a message to the rest of the league and say, no, you thought Leeds were the team to be reckoned with? No. We are the ones that you need to be worried about. And from that point on, we didn't look back. And I think that day, I think people started thinking, yeah, do you know what? I think we can, even at that stage, even before we'd reached New Year's Day, I think people were thinking, do you know what? We're on to something special here. This is going to be a good season. A really special season. And we didn't look back after that. That was the result which really let us know, as well as the rest of the league, that we were something special, that we were probably the best team in the division. And from then on that season, we played like the best team in the division. We were, we got our big game out the way, and everything after that basically was basically a side order. It was just an incredible day to be part of. And yeah, like I said, one we'll never forget. And yeah, the results just kept on coming after that, just win after win after win. One thing I do have to point out at this stage, in this absolutely amazing season, there was one kind of bleak point, which was probably the most insipid and uninspiring FA Cup run that you can have, really, without going out in the first match, because we made it through to the third round, having played nobody other than non-league teams. We came from behind to beat Billericay. We needed a replay to beat Horsham. And then in the third round, we drew Havant to Waterlooville. And just three names that still stick in my head and haunt me to this day. Rancid Football Club, who ruined our chances of a big day out at Anfield. And I mean, having trundled our way into the third round, we played against them at the Liberty and had, as we did most games, just dominated, played all the football, went ahead. But Havant to Waterlooville put in the most brutal performance I have ever seen from a team against the Swans. They were out to break legs that day. We had Stuart Atwell ref, who was intent on just allowing them to get on with it. And then, of course, they inevitably, after we'd gone down to 10 men, they obviously got an equaliser, which meant a replay. and the prize, Steve, was for the winners was a trip to Anfield, which at this stage, well, it was absolutely massive because we had not had a plumb Premier League. We hadn't played any Premier League teams in the cup for a number of years, about a decade, I think, almost at that stage. And we certainly hadn't played a team of Liverpool's calibre for a very long time. So excitement was rife, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, to say the least. Because I think the way we played that season as well, there was hope certainly from my point of view. Not maybe necessarily that we'd go to Anfield and win, but I thought we'd give a good account of ourselves and we'd give them a game. So, and obviously to go there is like a dream. And for, I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. You're obviously you're slightly younger than me, but I mean, for our generation, we hadn't seen us play one of the big teams. So, you can imagine, and we were desperate for it. And as you say, Havant and Waterlooville, ugh, what a disgusting football club. If they folded, I think the world would be a better place. I don't say that lightly. Yeah, horrible. I mean, I think they should have had 8 men in the first game, is the truth. But Stuart Atwell, for whatever reason, was just not having it. We absolutely battered them as well. That was the worst thing in football in terms. We had so many chances and only eventually got a goal. And then they've equalised with their only shot on target, I think. And then, obviously, we've gone there. And I think they had 4 shots on target and scored 4. So I think it was one of those things, really, where I think everything did just conspire against us. I think unfortunately, it was one of those things where, sometimes you have days like that where things go against you. And for some reason, it seems to happen in cup competitions, maybe more than in the league. But yeah, it was a bit of a gutter, wasn't it, to say the least. But on a lighter note, on the weekend that we would have been at Anfield, we went to Doncaster, our promotion rivals, and then won 4-0, didn't we? So, yeah, it wasn't all bad to come out with that, was it?
It didn't make up for losing a trip to Anfield, I'll be honest. And it wasn't so much... as well as the fact that we weren't going to Anfield, there was a real bitterness that they were going to Anfield.
Do you remember as well, the next day, Man United were playing somebody, and they invited them as guests of honour, and I was thinking to myself, they're bloody guests of honour, dirty bastards.
Oh, they'd have trashed the place. Absolutely. Oh, they were rotten. They were rotten to the core. A horrible bunch of players. They really were brutal. Just cheats. It's plain and simple. They were cheats, but they were allowed to cheat, and they, cheats do prosper sometimes. They got their big match at Anfield, and it's weird. Even after all these years, even after going to Anfield several times, even after seeing my team win at Anfield, that still grinds my gears. The fact that we missed out on that big away day in that manner, because like you said, I think that our team would have given them a good game. I mean, Havant and Waterlooville gave Liverpool a good game when they went to Anfield, so we would have definitely done so. But yeah, like you said, we did go to Doncaster. I think it was a Friday night, was it?
Yeah, it was.
And yeah, again, Doncaster, one of the top teams in the division. We went there and won 4-0. As emphatic as you can get. Some great goals again. And another result which just made it clear that we were going to be going up that season. And let's face it, we're probably going to be going up as champions.
Yeah, I think we went to Doncaster, from what I remember. We'd had a good week. We'd beaten a couple of sides at home. I think it was Port Vale and Crewe. And I remember that those 2 games gave us a nice little lead. So I remember I actually happened to go to every league game that season. It's the only season which I've done it. I couldn't have picked a better one, really. But so I remember going up to Doncaster. I think we were about 8 points clear. So we're just thinking, well, if we lose this, and I remember we had Nottingham Forest on the table, so just thinking we can afford here to basically lose both games. We'll still be top, and 2 of our harder games would be out the way. But obviously we've gone to Doncaster. We've won superbly, really, beyond anybody's dreams to go and win 4-0 there. Then we've gone to Forest and we've drawn 0-0, which again is a brilliant result. And if you look at it, as I said earlier, defensively, I did have some concerns. We'd gone to 2 very difficult places and kept clean sheets, which was incredibly encouraging, really, not just for that season, but going forward as well. So I think once those 2 games were out the way, I think from my point of view, there was no way really that we weren't going to go up. And you just sense with Martinez as well, there would be no slacking off, if you know what I mean. I just couldn't see it. I just had so much belief in him and the way that he was doing things that, it didn't. Promotion did just seem inevitable, really, didn't it? I think we didn't lose again until about early March, and I think we'd gone from the start of October to the start of March. We'd only lost one game, and I think Sod's Law, we come up against Millwall and Kenny Jackett, and that run, I think we were one short of the club record, or one short of going for of equaling the club record for an unbeaten games, and obviously we've lost to a former manager, really, but that's just the way football goes sometimes, isn't it? But
I remember that Millwall game at full time. Everybody was just kind of in a bit of a strange mood, like, oh, we've lost. Like it was such an unfamiliar feeling at that point. Like, oh, I did not expect this. Okay, all right. Right, yeah, fine. It was just, didn't really know how to react to it because it had been so long since we'd actually lost a league game. We'd lost the MK Dons in the Johnson's Paint Trophy, which was a bit of a shock. But yeah, in the league, it was very, very strange. But we kept going. We had some more memorable games between then and the end of the season. But I think one of the standout days of that season was a famous away day at Gillingham, Steve. I know that you were there. I was one of the couple of hundred, possibly thousands of people that packed into the Liberty to watch it being streamed live back into the stadium. Our first promotion back to the Championship in, God, more than 20 years, nearly 30 years probably. I mean, it wasn't the best of games in a season full of fantastically entertaining football. It wasn't a classic by any means, but it was the match that secured promotion.
Yeah, obviously it was a matter of when, wasn't it? It wasn't if. So, in that sense, it didn't have the edge of the Berry where you don't know if you're going up and then you're hanging on to the 1-0, and then when you do go up, obviously the moment is that much better for it, really. Not that I'm complaining, because the Swans take so much time off my life with stress that it was nice to have be in a situation where you knew what was coming was inevitable and it was going to be a good thing. So, yeah, I remember we'd had that a little wobble, really, hadn't we? And then went to Carlisle just before Gillingham on the Tuesday night. We got a 0-0, and Carlisle were chasing us at this point, so that was an encouraging result, really, in terms of going for the title as well as the league. And then we knew, obviously, going to Gillingham, that a win would be enough for us. I'd been to Gillingham before, and I knew it wasn't the best of away days, really. So, to be honest, it wasn't the best place to clinch promotion, because obviously it's a temporary stand with no roof. So obviously the atmosphere is crap, and then the structure of it, the thing isn't great. So definitely not a place I'd handpick to win promotion, if I'm honest with you. In terms of the game, so they scored quite early, and obviously they were aiming to stay up. So it wasn't like they had nothing on it, obviously. And then I remember Guillaume Bowser scored 2 goals, didn't he, just before half time, and we saw it out. And then, yeah, obviously at the end, it was brilliant. I mean, one memory I've got of the day was I remember just before kick-off, one of those rare occasions where Soccer Sunday decided we were going to be the main game away from home, and Jonathan Owen was doing his intros for the following day's show, and obviously he supports Cardiff, and he was taking a lot of abuse from the Swans fans. I think it took him ages to record his pieces to camera, because obviously everybody was making sure, you scum bastard, and wherever else was being heard. But to be fair, I think he seemed to grudgingly quite enjoy it. I mean, obviously he would have, he probably knew what was coming, and in all fairness, for him it must have been a terrible day, because you don't want to go and watch your great rivals win promotion too. But yeah, that certainly stands out, and a great day, really. And yeah, something I think for some of us, we thought we may never see it. Swansea in the second tier, because it'd been a miserable few years and it'd been a long time since we've been in there. But it was thoroughly deserved, really, wasn't it? I mean, we'd been fantastic for most of the season, and it was just about wrapping up the league title then, wasn't it?
Yep, and we did that. I guess we'd done that anyway, but the final day of the season, we there wasn't much focus on us, but we went to Brighton away. That's where we lifted the title, and importantly as well, as kind of just for kind of personal gratification, we got that win away at Brighton. meant that we had finished not only champions, but we were more than 15 points above Leeds, which meant, of course, that even without the points deduction, we would have finished above Leeds, meaning undisputedly we were the best team in the division that season. And there are still to this day, I think, some people who think that Leeds would have won the division had they not had the points deduction. But that, of course, is not true. Swansea were unquestionably the best team in the division, and I don't know, you may not have cared about it, Steve, but for me, I was like, yes, have that lead.
I can tell you right now, I did care, because one of my mates in uni, I'm still really good friends with him now, is a Leeds fan as well. So for me, it was absolutely vital. I mean, we needed. I remember going down to Brighton, and we were 16 ahead of them, so we knew if we won, we were going to be over 15 ahead of them. When I was going down there, I wasn't like thinking, oh yeah, we're going to get the trophy and all this kind of thing. I was thinking, no, we need to make sure we win this one, because we do not want to be less than 15 ahead of Leeds and having to put up with that crap. So, yeah, we got the job done, didn't we?
Because let's face it, Leeds fans, they're an unbearable bunch, and there's nothing worse than a happy Leeds fan, as far as I'm concerned. It's a happy Cardiff fan perhaps, but
that's what Cardiff fan is obviously worse.
But Cardiff fans are just predisposed to be miserable. I find you rarely come across a happy Cardiff fan.
Well, understandably, but at the same time, when they do well, it's excruciating.
It is pretty bad, but yeah, we won the title, which was the icing on the cake. Only the fourth time in our history that we'd actually finished top of a league. The second time in our lifetimes, and I mean, I don't think anybody could deny it was just it was totally deserved for what was an absolutely incredible season from an absolutely incredible team, the most dominant Swans team that possibly has ever been, if I'm being honest, because they were so far ahead of every other team in that division. And I think it's fair to say that we actually changed a lot of attitudes, because back then teams did not try to play football really to that much in the third tier, certainly nothing like we had produced. And suddenly we showed that without spending massive amounts of money, you can actually put together a team that can play stunning, really technically accomplished and entertaining attacking football, the likes of which had never been seen at that level. And I think it changed a lot of people's perspectives on what was possible in the lower leagues. And these days, actually, there's pressure on teams in League One to play entertaining, attractive football. And that is in no small part down to teams like us who just change people's perspectives and change people's ideas of what was possible at that level. It really was transformative, that team's impact on the Football League.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, I've seen a few other managers who've gone into the Football League, maybe especially mainly overseas managers in recent years, and they have cited that Martinez obviously was a bit of an influence on that and the style of play, which is interesting. I know Ian Holloway has spoken about it before, because he was more a bit like Kenny Jackett, wasn't he, previously, and a bit more long ball. But then you watch Martinez doing some time out from the game when he's working for 5 Live, and he based his Blackpool team on what we were doing then, and obviously Blackpool ended up in the Premier League. So it's certainly interesting that Martinez did influence a lot of, in terms of other clubs, in terms of how you can get out of the lower leagues by playing football, and it's a massive compliment to him, really, wasn't it? But I doubt many sides have dominated League One in the way that we did in that season. Really, that was a special season. There's no two ways about it. We've had a lot of success, but I wouldn't put much above that season, if I'm honest with you, because it was that good. I mean, and when you're winning every week, well, it's just a joy, isn't it? Especially when you're not just winning 1-0 and you're hanging on like maybe we did under John Hollins. I mean, you're winning, you're dominating the ball, you're creating chances, you're scoring goals. I mean, that's what we all go for, isn't it? And that team was superb, really.
That entire season was an exhibition, basically. It was like having a season ticket to watch the Harlem Globetrotters, because you didn't just get to celebrate wins. You just got this stunning enjoyment from seeing, a thing of absolute beauty. We kind of combined going to watch our football team with going to the theatre. It was just it was a spectacle, the likes of which nobody really expects to see from your team at that level. It was just a joy, and of course, it set expectations quite high for the following seasons, because I don't think when we went up to the Championship, as strange as it sounds, I don't think many people were kind of thinking, okay, I hope we survive. I think the focus was, okay, we basically went up without any kind of fear. We knew we had a very good team. We knew that we had an excellent, really special manager. And I don't think anybody had any kind of fear going up to the Championship, if I'm being honest. That promotion was so emphatic. We thought, we are definitely ready for this. We would have been ready for the Championship, whatever happened. But there were a few changes that summer. Undoubtedly, the most surprising one was one of our key players leaving for Leeds United in quite a foolish way, really, Steve.
Yeah, not an inspired Andy Robinson decision, to be honest with you. I think he went for the money, is the truth of it, and he sort of alluded to it previously. But it was a big mistake, wasn't it? I think initially he did play at Leeds, but then change of manager after they didn't do so well, and he never got to the Championship really in the end, did he? So you'd have to say for Robbo, it was a big mistake, and it was a shame because, much as you said earlier about Paul Anderson giving us a different dimension, in some ways Andy Robinson did as well, because if you want to play all this like perfect football and everything, sometimes if you can't break down the defence, you need to change something, and Robbo was always brilliant at shooting from outside the box, so he always had that option then as well, where he could give us that different problem for our opposition.
Yeah, he had cutting edge, Robbo. That was one thing you always got from him. He could put a cross in, but like you said, he could score a goal from 25 yards.
Yeah. And to be fair to Robbo as well, from the bench he was good. Some players are not suited to coming off the bench and doing much, but he was always pretty good at coming on and affecting the game if he was a sub as well. So there was always that to him, and it was a shame, wasn't it? And obviously Paul Anderson was the other one who left. I suppose now is a decent time to discuss really the interview that I had with him. He was. I think he said he went to Forest really because he still had his eyes really on breaking in at Liverpool, and he thought if he played a different style of football, it might give him a bit of an edge going forward. But the following year, then obviously when we had the whole issue with Martinez, before Martinez had left, we put a bid in for Paul Anderson, and he said to me that he was coming. As far as he was concerned, he wanted to come. It was a permanent deal this time, and obviously in the uptake there, Martinez left for Wigan. At the same time, Forest were interested, and he was speaking to Swansea, and he was saying, "Look, what's going on? Am I coming or am I not coming?" And there wasn't really any certainty because obviously the manager had gone at that stage, and Paulo Sousa hadn't come in, so he thought the best thing to do was to go to Forest. So in another world, if Martinez hadn't left, then I think Anderson would have come in permanently, and it may have been different. But that was a shame, and it was a loss as well, wasn't it? Because we'd lost two players really who'd been really big for us, hadn't we?
They really were, and you lost a presence on either wing as well. So they were pretty big shoes to fill. And I'll be honest, I always thought that our squad starting that season of the Championship was not as strong as the squad we'd finished League One with. I thought we'd been weakened that summer. We brought in Mark Gower from Southend on a free. He had, he didn't really make much impact early on in his career at the Swans. Brought in Gorka Pintado, who came with a big fanfare, big expectations. I know your opinions on it, Steve. Let's face it, he didn't live up to those expectations. Brought in a couple of other kind of Spanish style, so Federico Bessone, Albaceran. They weren't, they didn't set the world alight, did they, after they came in? The only player we brought in really that summer who made any kind of really big impact was Jordi Gomez on loan. That was the only, in total contrast really to the previous summer. The only truly new addition we made that summer, because we did, I guess, buy Ashley Williams, completing the deal after he'd been on loan, but he had been at the club already before that summer. but Jolly Gomez was the only real new face that we brought in who had a big impact on the team that season.
Yeah, Gomez was a huge player for us, wasn't he? He was another one of Martinez's gems, really. But the points you make are spot on, really, in terms of the other players. So they all flattered to deceive, really. I don't know if a lot of them probably were brought in more as like squad players rather than, players that were going to start, apart from maybe Pintado. But yeah, he feed the bull, he'll never score, is how I would sum him up. But Gomez was a big player for us, and obviously one big moment above all others stands out, doesn't it, when it comes to him?
Well, yeah, and we'll get to that now, I'm sure. I mean, we started life in the Championship, Steve, pretty well on the whole. I mean, we had a disappointing start away at Charlton, losing 2-0. I think that day we kind of felt, at least we've lost to Charlton, who were one of the favourites to go up that season. We thought we got one of the toughest games out the way. Turns out Charlton went down, I think, bottom of the league that season. But I think
did.
Our first home game was against another promoted team in Nottingham Forest. Gorka Pintado got off the perfect start, really, getting on the score sheet. We thought he was giving us a sign of things to come. It didn't turn out that way, but it was a 3-1 win, and it kind of set us on a way for that season, really. It got us up and going.
Yeah, it did. I think Charlton was a bit frustrating. I mean, we conceded in the first minute there, just like we did at Oldham the year before on the opening day, and we just didn't recover this time. It was frustrating, on an opening day. But obviously, it's one game. It's really not the end of the world, is it? But the Forest game, we dominated, really, just like this. Again, similar to the year before, we played Forest on the opening day. Oh, sorry, not the opening day, the first home game, and we dominated but didn't win. But this time we did, and we did win. So that was encouraging. I remember then we went to Plymouth and played well and won. So 6 points after 3 games, and all encouraging, really, because you never know how you're going to get on in a higher league, do you? I mean, as you say, I didn't think we'd go down because I just felt that we played so well the year before that I would have been amazed if there were worse sides than us. So I was confident in that score, but at the same time, you're never entirely sure, are you? So it's nice just to get a couple of wins early doors, just to get the pressure off and get the confidence flowing, really, isn't it?
And quite early on that season, I mean, we beat Premier League team Hull City in the first round of the League Cup. That was a very impressive result, and of course the draw then came for the second round, and we'd all been looking forward to renewing our rivalry with Cardiff City. We hadn't faced each other in a number of years. I'd never been to a South Wales derby in all my time supporting the Swans, and suddenly, just as we are promoted to the same league, we also draw them in the League Cup. I mean, I'll be honest, I couldn't make it to this game.
Oh no, you're joking.
I'm not joking to you. I'm not joking to you. I had to watch in a pub. I could not make it to Swansea that night because I was stuck in Aberystwyth. But I had to watch it in a pub in Aberystwyth. I mean, it was tense. I'll be honest. That was. I mean, just watching on TV though, you could see this was an occasion.
Yeah. That's putting it mildly. I mean, I was a student in Cardiff at the time, so for me, obviously, this was pretty big. Anyway, it wasn't my first experience of a derby. There had been a few that I'd been to before, but this one did feel different because, like I said, it'd been such a long time since we played them. I mean, we'd been, and obviously for us, it had been suffering really, hadn't it? Because they'd been above us for a period of time, and it's horrible, isn't it, when your rivals are above you? We've been fortunate ever since, really, that in general, we've had the better of it, so they've had to suffer, which is always glorious from our point of view. But it was big. I mean, I think the fact it was a night game as well probably helped. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious everyone would have either finished early or when they did finish, probably went straight to the pub, and that never does any harm, really, does it? Because so many derbies kick off early, don't they? But when you draw someone in a League Cup, then there's not really a lot you can do, is there? They're night games, and that's it. The police must despise it. They must be desperate for local rivals to not draw each other in this competition, because when it does, then obviously it's got the potential to kick off. But it was a fiery night at the Liberty. similar atmosphere to that Leeds game that we've talked about. Really, I mean, it was intense. The game wasn't great. That's one thing I would say, but it was in the same way. You literally could not take your eyes off it because that's what the way the derby games are really. But
it was gritty as well. It was there was a tension on the night. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, there's no two ways about it. I mean, it's a strange feeling when you go to a derby game and you get up those steps and you just see this wall of blue and you just look at it and just think to yourself, you're all absolute tossers, and you're just desperate for the misery to end up in their direction. And obviously in the end they ended up with a miserable night, didn't they? And Jordi Gomez, not the prettiest goal he scored by any stretch of the imagination, but probably the most important and definitely the one that was celebrated the most. And it was, a long time coming to get a moment like that, wasn't it? Because as I said, we'd suffered for them being above us for a long period of time, and to put one over them is always special. And I think in those circumstances, even more so really. And I can't believe you weren't there. I mean, it's very bittersweet. You seem to miss a lot of games that live long in the memory, don't you?
I have an awful track record of missing important games or like significant games. So that was one of the many games that have gone down in our club's history, basically, which I was not there for, that I was watching on TV or something like that. But yeah, it was just an amazing occasion. Even watching a pub, I was like, oh my, it looked absolutely incredible. I remember the neutrals, in the pub with me were like, God, what is going on? And the camera pans to people in swimming shorts and armbands and stuff in the stands. It was just outrageous, really. And then the final whistle blew, and it was just an incredible feeling. You wait so long to get a match against Cardiff, and then you beat them. I mean, what a night that was. It's still by far the most that I have celebrated a League Cup win, and we've bloody won the competition since then. But that still goes down easily without competition as my favourite League Cup match. It's it was just a great night. And it kind of, I think, gave us that kind of superiority complex over Cardiff, basically, for the remainder of that season now, probably for the years to come. I think we that result really annoyed Cardiff. I think they were quite cocky going into that match, and then they had their noses put out of joint by that result, definitely. And of course, we played them again twice that season in the league and didn't lose. And of course, the never beat the Jack stuff started, and I think it meant more to us than it did to them at that stage. But the fact that we beat them then suddenly meant that they wanted to win the next match as much as we did. So it just kind of supercharged the match, which was already pretty nuts, really, if we're being honest. So yeah, it's an incredible occasion. And a couple of weeks later, Steve, there were just a lot, as with the previous season. I mean, we didn't enjoy the same level of success, obviously, in the higher division, but there were some incredible games here. I'm looking back to the fixtures now. The 2-0 away at Preston, where Ferry Bodder scored that goal, the 40-yarder. Against Preston, one of the great strikes in Swansea City history.
Yeah, I was there that night as well.
What was that like?
It was just a bit of shock, really, when he's hit it, and you can see the goalkeeper scrambling at it. You're thinking he's not going to go in, is it? Then it goes in, and you're all just going wild, just like wild. Obviously, it's a great goal, and then obviously it's put us in front as well. There's just, it is one of them that catches you by surprise because you're not really seeing it go in. But yeah, when as soon as I saw the goalkeeper scrambling a bit, I was thinking maybe this is going in, yeah. And obviously it did. It's audacious, really, wasn't it? We should probably talk a fair bit about Ferry Bodder, because for those, I don't know when it was that he got injured. I think it was probably about 15, 16 games in, but
yes.
He was on fire. I'm not sure there was a better player in the league at that point, to be honest with you. I mean, he was running games. I mean, there was one game, I remember we played Watford at home not long before, obviously, he had that nasty injury. And he played this, like, pass for Jason Scotland from inside his own half. It was absolutely outrageous. It more or less put him one-on-one. And obviously, Scotland did what he did. He finished it off. But it was just crazy that a player like that was in the Championship. And I know a lot of people think, if he'd stayed fit, maybe we would have made the playoffs. But I think if he'd stayed fit in January, someone would have come in and bought him because he was playing that well. He was just on another level. And, it's one of the great, tragedies, really, that he didn't get to play in the Prem, because I think he would have he'd have been here quite far into our spell in the Premier League. I think he was a special player, wasn't he?
I think it's one of the great regrets the Swansea City fans have, really, that Ferry Bodden never got the chance to play top-flight football, because I think he would have excelled. I think he would have absolutely just thrived at Premier League level. I mean, at League One level, he barely looked like he was getting out of second gear most days. I mean, he just cruised through matches and still looked just so elegant on the ball. And just, a 50-yard diagonal pass was absolutely nothing to him. It was absolutely nothing. He just spread the ball around the pitch with such ease. I mean, one of the best passes, without a shadow of doubt, that we've had at this club. And in the Championship, I mean, he raised his game, because obviously in the summer there had been a lot of talk about him leaving, and at one stage it looked likely that he was going to leave to go to Derby, who were quite frankly arseholes about the transfer. They thought that they were kind of bigger than us and could bully us into selling him, and that was at a stage when we didn't really like getting bullied as a club, and Hugh Jenkins in particular did not enjoy that kind of attitude from clubs. And in the end, of course, he signed a contract extension with us. And at the start of that season, he was on another planet. He was such an incredible football to watch, incredibly intelligent, really tough presence in the midfield as well, and just an incredible passer of the ball, unbelievable passer of the ball, and somebody who could score a goal from 45 yards as well. He had it all. He was a complete footballer. And you're right, there wasn't a better player in the division that season. I mean, I always said you could compare him to someone like Nigel de Jong, a compatriot of him, but it's just such a shame that he never got the chance to really compare himself with those kind of players, because I think if he got the Premier League, he would have won international caps. He was such an incredible footballer, and he was running the show for us, really, in midfield. And then suddenly, in late November of 2008, he picked up what seemed like a really innocuous injury. Nothing much in the clash, but he got stretchered off, and we found out that his knee ligaments had torn, and he was never the same after that. He tried to come back several times, but his knee was quite clearly never up to it, never even close. And it is just devastating that we kind of lost a player like that, so with so many good years ahead of him still to play. And it says a lot that he was with us for basically a year and a half, really, League One, and half a season in the Championship. And still, people speak so highly of him. People just rave about him so much. And it is just a shame that other fans never got to appreciate the player that we got to appreciate. Because if he'd been in the Premier League, he would have been a star. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you've said. I know sometimes with players who, maybe they get talked up more than they should do, but Boda would have accelerated. He would have been brilliant in the Prem, I think. And as I said earlier, he would have been, he'd have lasted a good few years with us in the Prem, and he may well have won international caps. I mean, if you look at the fact that the Dutch side, particularly in recent years, haven't been so good, I think Boda certainly would have had a call up at some point if he'd been playing regularly for us in the Prem. But
let's face it, we've had players at the Swans who've been Dutch internationals, so we've got a pretty good idea. We've had Jonathan de Guzman and Leroy Fair, both of them midfielders who played similar positions to Bodder. I'd say Bodder was a better player than Fair, and do you know what? You could possibly say he was a better player than Jonathan de Guzman. Honestly,
I think potentially he was better than both. Obviously, he never really had the chance to show it. But
no.
Yeah, if you look at it, I think there's definitely a case to be made that he could have been better than them both. But it's one of those sad things we'll never know, will we?
No, and his absence. I mean, as if we needed proof of how key he was. We didn't win any of the following 8 games after he was first injured. We didn't lose any of them either, Steve. It was a weird run. We went 8 games with 8 straight games drawing, which I think equaled the Football League record.
Yeah, it did. I remember that well.
Very strange record, and it was a run which in the end probably cost us a playoff spot, because there were some very winnable games in the midst there, games that we should have won really, but didn't. And if we just converted 2 of those, maybe 3 into wins, then we would have been in the playoff mix at the end of the season. But it was a season where we didn't actually lose many games in the grand scheme of things, but a lot of points were dropped because we drew matches and just couldn't finish them off. I mean, one of that run was an away game at Birmingham that I remember around Christmas.
That was the last game of the run, that was.
It was, and I mean we battered them, and Birmingham were top of the league, I think, at that stage, or at least in the top 2. And we absolutely outclassed them in every single way, but we just could not find the back of the net. No matter how hard we tried, we just could not get the ball in the back of the net, and we drew 0-0. And the frustration continued, but it only continued until the next game because we beat Burnley then away. In what was a bit of a shock result, really, because we've been drawing all these games, and Burnley were, they were, looking like they were going to challenge for the playoffs. They'd been doing really well in the cup competitions that season as well. But after that Burnley game, then a couple of weeks later, we had a very memorable away game down the south coast against the FA Cup holders, of course, Portsmouth.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the standout games really from that season. I remember obviously when we drew Portsmouth and thinking, that's a good draw. Obviously they're the holders, and they'd obviously an established Premier League side. And I remember going down there thinking, we could pull off a result. Yeah, I did fancy us, but I fancied us at least to pull them back to the Liberty, and we played the full team. And from what I remember, I think Portsmouth did. I mean, like Sir David James and Sol Campbell were playing.
It's David James. You had the centre back partnership was Sol Campbell and Sylvain Distin, 2 very, very good centre backs there. You had Jermaine Pennant, who was playing pretty well back then. You had Peter Crouch playing up front. Kanu came on. There were some good players in that team, and they were, they had lost a few players in the summer after winning the FA Cup, and of course they had Tony Adams in the bench, which in the dugout, which definitely didn't help them. It was pretty tragic, really. But yeah, we went down there, and we again showed really our quality, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And obviously Nathan Dyer scored that day, didn't he? He'd only been with us a couple of weeks, obviously on loan from Southampton, which that went down like a lead balloon, didn't it?
Oh, he loved it. You can see he absolutely adored it. He was getting dog's abuse from the whole crowd. They absolutely hated him. And he scored the first, and he had a brilliant game as well. And we also had Dimitrios Konstantopoulos in goal that day, who was on loan with us. And he hadn't been playing much, but he got the nod in that match and had an absolute blinder again. And yeah, it was brilliant. Another brilliant day. It was very cold, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, it was cold down there that day. Well, mid-January, innit? It's not surprising.
It was freezing cold, but a fantastic result, knocking out the FA Cup holders, knocking out the Premier League team for the first time since the late 90s. I mean, just a brilliant day, and yeah, one of the highlights of that season, definitely.
Yeah, it was, and I think one of the funniest things for me, because I've got a cruel sense of humour, was that we realised that my dad was going to a wedding on the day of the next round. So then all the way home, me and my mates were just winding her up, saying, "Oh no, it's going to be Man U away now, and he won't be going anywhere." But yeah, we ended up having Fulham, didn't we, at home, and that was another day, really, wasn't it, where we showcased how good we were, and it was a travesty that went to a replay. We absolutely battered them.
We absolutely dominated them. It wasn't even close. I think Fulham had a poor away record at that time. So I think before the game, even we thought, I remember thinking before the game we should win this one. I thought we should be favourites for this game. The kind of confidence we had in that team back then. But yeah, it was only a 1-1 draw. Another game among many that season where we were by far the better team and just couldn't get the win. Went to a replay, knowing that we had a match against Manchester United waiting for us in the next match if we won. And for a stage, it looked like we were finally going to get that really big FA Cup tie.
Yeah, it did. I remember when we went in front in that game and just thinking, oh, this is the dream. But there was a good over half hour left, I think, when Jason Scotland put us in front. And I remember then Danny Murphy come on as sub, and he started to take control of the game, and you're just thinking, oh, we're really hanging on you. This is hard. And they got one, and then they got another one quickly, didn't they? I remember that journey home being quite somber, because we did take a lot of fans there that night, to be fair. We had great support. But it was just gutting, because just like the year before, we'd been, harshly denied what was a dream tie, really, wasn't it? I remember, just it's such a sinking feeling, wasn't it, when you're a lower league side and you have this chance in the FA Cup to draw a big side, and then obviously you lose in a replay, knowing that you've got that big side in the next round if you can win. It's horrible, isn't it? I mean, people probably don't appreciate it now because we've been in there. Obviously, it's not that important, really, is it? And maybe in about 10 years' time, if we still haven't been back in the Prem, then it'll be a similar feeling then for the younger generation again. But
these days, I really, the last thing I want is to face a team like Man United in the FA Cup. I'll be honest. I mean,
when we drew Man City last season or whatever it was, I was gutted, and then obviously the way it turned out was even worse, wasn't it? But yeah.
Oh man, yeah. But back then it was there was we were just desperate to get that crack at a really big team, because we genuinely had such confidence in the team that we had, that we thought, do you know what, they could give them a good game if we play the way we do in the Championship each week against a team like Man United or Liverpool, we can turn some heads. But unfortunately,
another thing I remember was the Man United game would have been the Saturday 5:30, which is like the perfect kick-off time as well.
It is the perfect kick-off time. And do you know what? One of the things now in this coronavirus, going off topic slightly, is people saying like, Sky are going to be showing matches pretty much around the clock, so they're going to be kicking off at like midday, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 8 o'clock on a Saturday, which if you're watching on TV sounds absolutely amazing, I'll be honest. And I saw loads of people complaining, like, oh, this is what it's going to be like when fans are let back in. Now, they're only thinking about the TV companies, not thinking about the fans. I thought to myself, well, two things. One, part of any good footballing day is going to the pub and watching the football before and after the match. So in that sense, it's good. And two, I'll be honest, pretty much half of those kickoff times are better than your average 3 o'clock kickoff if you're a fan. 5:30 on a Saturday is an absolutely amazing time to be watching football, whether you're home or away. It's a brilliant, brilliant time to be watching football. I don't get these people who complain about, not being a 5:30 kickoff when the match is at a better time. That's just like a little rant for me against the kind of football purists that don't actually realise how good some kickoff times are. But yeah, the back to that season in the Championship, the loss to Fulham. Kicked off a bit of a disappointing run, really, in the league, where we picked up, one win in 8 games, which seemed to kind of kill off any hopes that we had of a playoff spot, really. Before we went into the third derby of the season against Cardiff. It's not a derby that we won, Steve, but it is one which lives long in the memory for many reasons. The last one at Ninian Park.
Yeah, it is. It was only the second time I'd been there to watch the Swans, and the other one was in that FAW final. So the first time I was going there really with a full house, and you're looking forward to it. Obviously, it's something different. Obviously, there weren't many games left there then either, because they were moving. So yeah, I remember going up there, and I think I was one of the last buses in. I got in there about 11:15, because I don't know if you remember, it was an 11 o'clock kickoff, which is staggering, really, isn't it?
Well, I was the opposite. We were on one of the first buses in there, so it was totally empty when we got there. It was just us basically, and behind us was Pancho from Dirty Sanchez. One of the most random things, like an hour and a half before kickoff, barely any fans in the home end, and he just takes his shirt off, climbs up on top of his seats, and starts shouting abuse at the fans, like totally alone. Everybody's like, "Is this guy all right?" But it set the tone for the rest of the day, because it was one of the most bonkers away days I've ever been in, and one of the best away atmospheres I've been in as well.
Yeah, it was. That was a tasty away day, wasn't it? I remember just to our left, wasn't there? There was a lot of probably the Cardiff Soul crew, and a couple of blokes in there took a fair bit of abuse. Didn't they?
The one
if you remember?
The one.
Yeah, that's it. The guy in the pink shirt who looked like he's a roidhead. He took a rinsing, didn't he? To say the least. Yeah, that always makes me smile whenever I think of that, because in the end there were even Cardiff fans behind him laughing, because I think it was like he's done.
There's some of the songs that were aimed in his direction are like for legal reasons, some of them we cannot repeat. They were just horrific, but it was absolutely hilarious. It has to be said. It was just an amazing day, and it looked. I mean, one of the other things I remember was when the players came out to start their warm up. Who was the first player out of that tunnel? Alan Tate.
Yeah, it was his pre-match ritual, wasn't it? He was always first out, but obviously he would have been first out no matter what that day, wouldn't he?
I remember, and he walked across the pitch from the tunnel straight in front of like the main stand there at the other end of the pitch where all the Cardiff fans were, and he just started doing his stretches right on the touchline in front of them, and they were just shouting abuse at him, absolutely slating him, and then he just blew a kiss to them and walked, and then came over closer to the away fans then to do his warm up. Absolutely, just set the tone for the day. And obviously, that from later on in that game, there'd be a coin flying from that stand then, which of course hit the referee. We'll get to that later. But I mean, it was brilliant atmosphere. Really tense. Swans had won the first derby that season in the League Cup. We'd drawn the second. So Cardiff hadn't beaten us at this stage, and they definitely saw themselves as a kind of bigger and better team at that stage. They were.
Well, they always have, haven't they?
Well, yeah, exactly. They always have, but they were challenging right up the top of the table at that stage as well. They were going for automatic promotion. They were thinking about the playoffs really, and early on in the game, Swans take the lead. A lovely 1-2 between Dyer and Scotland, and then the ball ends up in the back of the net, and the celebrations were absolutely off the wall.
Yeah, it was wild when that one went in. Yeah, it was, as you say, it was a lovely work goal. Really, I think from what I remember after that, I mean, to be fair to Cardiff, they had a lot of chances, and I think Reece made a couple of good saves. I think there was one with Chopra where he's at the post. They say it's the game that sticks out partly as well because Sky quite often show it on their football classics, don't they? So it's like 15-minute highlights. So I'm sure loads of people who were listening have probably seen that quite a few times. But yeah, there's another one. I think Paul Parry had a chance where he's hit it wide, and yeah, they had their chances. There's no two ways about it. But I mean, at half time, we, obviously we're in front and we're thinking, God, we could win the last derby here, and then they're going to be pig sick about it.
You couldn't help but think like that, could you? And then, but Michael Chopra soon after halftime did make it 1-1, and it was a very tense match. There's no doubt about it. From then on, probably looking back, Cardiff were probably the better team on the day, but in the last minute of the 90, up pops Joe Allen, who's never scored before for Swansea City. Gets the ball just outside the box, shifts it onto his right foot, and just pinpoint accuracy picks out the bottom corner beyond Stuart Taylor. And that, it's fair to say I've never been in an away end which has lost its head to that level. I mean, people were just climbing all over each other, absolutely losing their minds, trying to get at the players. When people talk about limbs these days, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, it was mad when that went in, wasn't it? It was just I was on the terrace rather than the seats, but I remember people just running everywhere, jumping all over each other, hugging random people, which is always a good sign of a mad celebration. And yeah, I mean at that stage, it's late, and you're thinking, God, we maybe just won the last start of the year with a very late winner. You're just thinking, it just doesn't get better than that. And obviously, a local lad has scored, and it's his first goal, as you said, and he's lost it. All the players have lost it. It's one of the ultimate highs you can have in football, isn't it? But unfortunately, one man who is desperate for the limelight more than anybody else, and the worst referee in the history of the game worldwide, decided to get involved, didn't he? Because he can't help himself.
And this is after he's been stitched up, literally, earlier on the match, after he was struck on the head with a coin from the home end. And still he felt he owed Cardiff a favour. It's a decision that still wrangles to this day. I mean, just a couple of minutes after we take the lead, Ashley Williams goes in to win a header against, I think, Ross McCormack. And then out of nowhere, Mike Dean points to the spot. I think I was the only one in the entire away end who was actually watching when that happened, because I mean the challenge went in, and I just looked at Mike Dean, and you could see that he was getting ready to blow for a penalty. I was like, no, don't you dare. And then of course he did it, and that away end went from absolute jubilation, just euphoria, to just a sickening feeling that we'd been cheated and that we'd been robbed late on. And Doris de Vries wasn't the best of penalty savers, so I didn't have much hope that he was going to save that penalty. And of course, Cardiff got that equaliser right in the end, which denied us what would have been one of the most enjoyable derby wins ever.
Yeah, it's one of those that you never get that chance again, because obviously they were moving grounds and everything like that. So it really would have been a special one to win. And like I say, I'll never forgive that man for as long as I live for giving the softest penalty I think I've seen. Crazy to give that at that stage of a game. I mean, for God's sake.
And even to this day, we've had some awful refs. We've had some shocking refs refereeing us. People who have really bloody soured the mood when they've arrived at our matches. People who fans just cannot forgive. But he is still, I think, public enemy number one among referees when it comes to Swansea.
Yeah, I think he is. And I don't know if there'll ever be a day where he is, because I'm sure as we go on in other ones where I think the Nottingham Forest playoff game and the Taylor Red as well, he could have stopped us going into the Prem. So yeah, I think hate is a strong word, but I hate that man. I really do. I think he's got a problem with us. And I can tell you right now, the feeling is mutual, because we've got a very, very big problem with him. I don't know why he hasn't retired. He should have been retired off by someone else. He's an attention-seeking twat. He's
got some kind of cult status, basically, because he is a celebrity ref, because he is, he clearly loves himself. And there are a lot of people who say, oh, classic Mike Dean, etc., but it's one thing you'll never hear any Swansea fan say.
No, you're right. And if I'm honest, I'm even through this outbreak now. I mean, Tranmere are in danger of going down, and I hope they do, because he supports them.
It's that bitter. Put simply, it is that bitter. Yeah, that was a really difficult one to take, that match. If we got a win that day, it would have just been bliss. It would have been amazing. And it's one of those just what if matches. You look back, you'll never get the chance to win in those circumstances again. With it being the last match ever at Ninian Park. As it turns out, I mean, I guess Cardiff's inability to win that match helped in one of the most spectacular end-of-season implosions that there has ever been. They went from being third and very close to an automatic spot to missing out on the playoffs entirely on goals scored, I think. Which was
and don't forget as well, it's because they lost 6-0 at Preston a couple of weeks before, and then Preston beat them to it.
Yeah, amazing, absolute. The happiness I felt at the end of that season. I mean, the Swans actually won the next 3 games after that, after being on a really poor run of results. Beat Norwich at home, beat Barnsley away, and then got a 1-0 at home to Bristol City, which put us actually back sort of in contention for the playoffs. We were and we were still in with a chance going into the final 2 games of the season, but a disappointing 1-0 away defeat away at Sheffield United finally killed those playoff hopes. That was a nasty game. That Sheffield United team were a horrible bunch to play against. They really, really were. They were extremely physical. And masters of the dark arts. Really, there were a lot of horrible players in that side, and that wasn't a nice game. I'll be honest. But then we finished off the season then with a 1-0 home defeat against Blackpool. But a very respectable 8th place finish in our first season back in the Championship, Steve. I mean, how do you look back at that season?
Well, it was a great season. There's no two ways about it. We want to be overly critical, which I know some people are sometimes. We definitely could have been in the playoffs. I wouldn't dispute that, to be honest with you. And maybe the Boulder injury obviously was
could have because it might.
I don't think we should have been in there. No, it was still a really good season. And like I said, the Boulder injury, if you look at that, and then Mike Dean cost us 2 points. They could have been critical, couldn't they? Did we have 1 or 2 other injuries? I think if we'd had Dyer as well from the start of the season, that would have made a difference, because we did seem to struggle against teams that were sitting deep against us. So when we had that bit of pace that we'd missed, that we'd had with Paul Anderson the year before, I think that made a difference as well. And so, I don't think we should have finished in there, but we definitely could have, because we weren't far off, were we? But it was still a good season.
From my point of view, we probably should have that season, if I'm being honest, because we had a lot of we had so many games which we dominated, but just couldn't find that killer goal that would have finished it. We didn't lose that many games that season. We had a heck of a lot of draws, and in the vast majority of those draws, we were easily the better team, and it would have only taken a couple of goals in each of those games to get us into the playoffs. And if we had made it into the playoffs, then who knows, really? I mean, it was Burnley who eventually took the 6th place, who went up at Wembley. I've always said I thought deservedly, because they'd sacrificed their league campaign to a large degree to prioritise the cup matches, but they were a very good team that season, and it was great to see them beat Sheffield United, who were a pretty horrible bunch to play against. But yeah, I think, as brilliant as that season was, and as amazing as so many of the memories were, I think actually we finished lower down the table than our performances merited.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying, but I mean, if you look at those 8 draws in a row, I mean, we didn't win them because we weren't good enough on the day. So I think we probably do have ourselves to blame. That's the real truth of it. If you want to be critical, but there were too many games like that, really, where we didn't finish teams off, and I think that's probably ultimately why we didn't get in there. And
I mean, we've kind of we're getting to the end of this podcast now, but in the next podcast we'll look ahead to the following season. But of course, at the end of that season, Steve, things were so positive. Everybody was feeling hyper enthusiastic, extremely optimistic for the future. I mean, this was only our first season back of the Championship after nearly 30 years. It was more than 20 years anyway. I mean, it was incredible first season back there. We seemed to be on the up. We had a fantastic team. We had probably the best manager in the division. But of course, that was all shattered then in that summer when Martinez left, and it hit us hard, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. There's no two ways about it. I mean, like I say, everything was rosy, really, and it was, I think, from my point of view, with Martinez in charge, it was just, we felt like we really could get into the Premier League, and he felt that anything was possible, really. And then, obviously he'd said, and the golden phrase, I was kicked out as a player, it'll be the same as a manager.
Why did he say
that? Well, I know, why did he say it? But you believed it, because we thought he was one of us, didn't we? I think that's what the truth of it was.
I believed everything that came out that man's mouth. I was just smitten. Honestly, I've never ever loved a man so much. He was just, I thought everything that came out of his mouth was gospel. I thought he is with us. He could be with us for 10 years here. I genuinely thought at the end of that season, it is only a matter of time before we're in the Premier League, because I thought as long as Martinez is here, he's going to keep building. We're so clearly on the right track. We're so clearly building and developing all the time. It was only a matter of time, and I was very confident that we were going to be challenging seriously for promotion the following season. And then, of course, Wigan came in, and my first reaction was, well, he's not going to go for Wigan, are they? They barely stayed. I think they barely stayed up the previous season. They were a really small, struggling Premier League team, really. Why would he leave a team that was so clearly on the up to go join Wigan? But that's when we found out that actually he had quite strong feelings for Wigan as well.
Yeah, it was insulting, if I'm honest with you. I know Wigan were in the Prem, but I just didn't see it, because I thought to myself, well, Wigan they've done well the last few years, but they're a club now that can't really go any further. And I was thinking, we're not going to leave us to go there. He was a shitty little club that get crap crowds and whatever else. And then it turned out that he did, and I felt completely and utterly betrayed. There's no other way to describe it. And furious. I don't know if I've ever been so angry with an individual, if you know what I mean. Certainly not a footballer anyway. And just, I was so angry with it. I can't put it into words. I just couldn't believe he'd let us down.
It was like being cheated on by the love of your life. It was like that sounds ridiculous, but genuinely, like he could have done anything as in Swansea. He could have walked down Kingsway and shot somebody in the chest, and people would have given him praise for his fantastic aim, and he could walk on water. There was just, he had this kind of Jesus-like persona in Swansea. He was absolutely adored. We thought we had an absolute, we thought we were on to the ultimate winner here. We had one of the best up and coming managers in Europe, who absolutely loved the club and didn't ever want to leave us. I mean, how could that go wrong? We're on to, great. We're on the road to greatness here, and then suddenly he ditches us for Wigan. I mean, what's that about?
I know. It's just, there's a question though now, right? Have you forgiven him?
Forgiven, that's a strong word. My feelings have definitely eased. There's no doubt about that. I probably have forgiven him, if I'm being honest. I think looking at what he's achieved since leaving us, and I think by now I can see I'm kind of like, okay, it did work out for you in the end. We've gone on to great things in the end as well. I still don't know if I'd say I've forgiven him, I'll be honest. My emotions have definitely softened considerably. And I do wish him every good luck. I mean, when Belgium were playing against England in the World Cup, I was definitely, rooting for Martinez and, hailing his Swansea credentials, etc. What about you? Would you go as far as saying you've forgiven him?
I think I have, because especially if we look back now, he did play an enormous role in our success, not just when he was here, but then obviously we stuck with the philosophy and everything like that. And then when we moved away from it, it turned shit. So that made me appreciate it more, if that makes sense, because you just think, well, if he was here, this wouldn't be happening with it. Sometimes you just need that bit of time, don't you? But I mean, I still am angry that he said he had to be kicked out, if you know what I mean, and the fact that he brushed it under the carpet as such. But he should have fronted up and apologised for it, and he never really has. And I think that does genuinely annoy me a lot, I would say.
And I've never, ever kind of believed every word that comes out of a manager's mouth in the same way since. He made me skeptical of managers and just everybody in football, basically. Whenever somebody says something in football these days, I always take it with a pinch of salt because of Roberto Martinez, because I believed everything he said at that time. And these days, even people who've been at the club forever, etc., and I have no reason to doubt. I'll never kind of buy into it in the same way that I did with Roberto, because he because
he didn't need to say he had to be kicked out, did he?
Didn't, and that's the thing. He said things that he really didn't need to say. But I mean, it is a good time to talk about his legacy, because, like you said, what as much as that hurt, I mean, it hurt a lot because he'd done such an amazing job. If he had been a mediocre manager, it would not have hurt so much. But it genuinely felt so special when he was here. It felt unique. It felt like we were the greatest club to be supporting on earth. Like I would not have felt jealous of any other club at that stage. It was just heaven being a Swansea fan at that stage. The quality football that we watched under him, the progress that we made climbing up from League One to the Championship, and like you said, he did put things in place there. He changed the philosophy around the club. He changed the style of play. He changed the way we do things, and he did lay a great foundation then for the managers who followed.
Yeah, that's the thing. So as disappointed and angry as we were, I've definitely mellowed, and I think the fans have in general. I mean, if you remember Alan Tate's testimonial, that was 2 or 3 years ago now, wasn't it? I remember he played and he did get a good ovation, and I suppose that does show that the time does heal. And it's one of those things. I don't think we'll ever forget the sense of betrayal that comes with it. I wouldn't dispute that at all, because he did let us down, and I'll always stand by that. And he hurt us, as you say, but he only hurt us because what was happening was so brilliant that we were devastated at the prospect of things changing. But it's a funny one, isn't it? He's a key part of our history, though. When you think about it, his influence is still here even now. So it's difficult to really comprehend just how big the decision was in the end to give him the job, and how much how this club would be a completely different club really without him. So he deserves his respect. And I mean, I wrote a blog about him a couple of weeks ago, really, about the legacy of Martinez, and I sort of look at, he's a bit like our Johan Cruyff, I think, because if you think of Barcelona, they obviously, before Cruyff, they've had success, but they've never won the European Cup, had they? I don't think they've ever won 4 league titles in a row, which happened with him. And I think ever since then, they've sort of looked to carry on that style. And obviously, Pep Guardiola is very influenced by him. For example, he was a player that was given his debut by Cruyff. And I think Martinez should be looked upon as a similar type of figure. I mean, if we're looking to do things, we have to make sure we're playing a certain style of football, in my opinion. And that comes from him. Yeah,
we're a demanding fan base, largely because of him. We don't, we expect, entertaining, attractive football because he set those standards. He was the one who raised those expectations and made it a Swansea thing, really. As much as we've been entertained the previous season, he introduced a style of play which was unique, and a way of doing things which was unique. And in this era where managers just come and go and don't hang around for too long, especially at Swansea these days, managers don't really get much chance to really stick their stamp on a club, but that's definitely what Martinez did, and it's a stamp which has lasted to this day in terms of the fan culture and what fans expect from teams. We don't always expect wins, but we do, well, at the very least, have a very high appreciation of entertaining, technically astute football, because he introduced us to that, and we loved it so much. And he did change the club. There's no doubt about that. Not many managers fundamentally changed a club, but he did. He really did. and that's testament to his greatness as a manager, really, and it explains why he's gone on to have success elsewhere, winning an FA Cup, and of course now taking Belgium to the third place in the World Cup. Well, it's been a slightly longer one than usual this week, but we had a lot to discuss from what was a fantastic and fascinating era in the club's history. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've enjoyed kind of reminiscing about these fantastic matches, these fantastic players that we had in this period, and hopefully you will join us again soon when we will be looking ahead then to what followed Martinez as the Swans could try to keep things together and keep on track to the Premier League. Hopefully you'll join us then, and until next time, thank you very much for joining us.